Good afternoon and welcome to the school board workshop concerning Head Start. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Ms. Strappy, for being ready to present. I would like to take a moment, and I had just been informed of the tragic passing of Latangi Smith from Duval, a teacher at Duval Head Start over the weekend. And if we could we join in a moment of silence in her honor and memory? Thank you very much. Ms. Strappy?
Yes, sir.
The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for having me. And I want to say good afternoon. For those who don't know, I'm Natalie Strappy. I'm the Executive Director for Early Learning Development in the Parent Academy. And today we'll discuss, Today we'll discuss just a couple of things, mainly focusing on Head Start, but looking at an overview of early learning development in the Parent Academy. We've titled this The Uncharted Journey simply because we're in a place we've never been before, and we're traveling down a road, and there is a bright spot at the end, and we will get there, but we realize that this is something that we haven't faced before, and there is an art to it, and that's what we want to discuss with you today. And we're looking to discuss this with you and to gather any input or direction or anything that you all have to provide to us. Quickly, as I said, we're going to look at an overview of early learning development in the Parent Academy as well as the Head Start competitive process. For those of you who aren't aware, as far as in my background, I started in secondary at Eastside High School. And coming to early was definitely a bit of a whirlwind and a steep learning curve. And what I learned the most, and the question that I always had in high school, is, you know, when you are teaching students and you're working with families, sometimes you wonder, you know, where is the connect or the disconnect? And coming to early learning, the world of early learning, I've learned a lot, especially as Ms. Ann, the former Head Start director, handed the baton to me. I learned that a lot of what we face in secondary is what we face in early. And meaning preschool, we face a lot of the same challenges, we have a lot of the same concerns. And because of that, we are, as we all are, we're very passionate about this work. So looking at early learning development in the Parent Academy, our service model, and all of you have, we've been able to prepare a booklet for you, and so the slides, you have them in your booklet just in case it wasn't as visible on the screens. But we realize that there is an art to what we do, and we've coined the phrase that students and families are our business, because this is our business model, and our business model is centered around innovation, it's centered around high quality experiences, it's centered around relationships with families and our community, creativity, accountability, customer service, and at the end of the day, we must be responsive. And our responsiveness is to our data, is to our partners, is to our families, and is to the need of our students. And we work really hard at ensuring that everything that we do every day is fully encompassed by these tenets. So we wanted to share that with you just to help you understand that that is the art to our service model. So a quick 5-year program overview. Looking at school readiness, which is our education arm, I wanted just to share very quickly and briefly just a couple of assessments that we've been able to gather and we've had analyzed, and looking at our post-assessments, and what you'll see between our pre and our post-assessments between 14-15, 15-16, 16-17 is that every year we are able to demonstrate growth within with our students. We are able to demonstrate growth. And as you can see in the bell curve for 15-16 looks the exact same or very similar as far as in the gains that we've made over time. And for us, we focus on various areas, but the big areas are language, literacy, math, logic and reasoning, approaches to learning. And the big one, believe it or not, is social emotional. And so what we've realized is the social emotional piece is probably at the top of the list with language and literacy and math, simply because our students are still trying to figure out what their feelings are and how to appropriately express them. And we work a lot with helping them understand that. So family community engagement and ERSEA. ERSEA is enrollment, recruitment, selection, eligibility, and attendance. And I may have mixed a couple of those up, but that's what it stands for. And so basically what this means is unlike a traditional K through 12, we are responsible for recruiting all 640 students. And if a student or a family decides to withdraw, we have 30 days to replace that student, because every month we have to turn our enrollment into the federal government and we must be fully enrolled. So our team does a really good job of working with that. So looking at our 5-year impact, and that's what we're focusing on. We've provided 4,777 social service referrals. We've completed 2,900 home visits. We've served 1,600 when it comes to social services in various areas based on the need. We provided 1,600 social services, and what we know is our parents, the highest need that they've had that we've been able to gather data on is food and housing, it's education, it's employment, and then the list goes up. So looking at ERSEA, we've maintained our enrollment all 5 years, and because that's accountability to, we've had 4,695 applications that we've taken in over the last 5 years, and we've served 3,600 children. And then looking at the type of parents or the category of the parents that we've served, 66% of them have been employed with some type of job, and then they've all we have the data here looking at their educational background. With health and disabilities, this slide here you don't have because it's our latest update, but we've provided 4,227 health screenings looking at vision, hearing, blood pressure, height and weight. That's in-house that we've provided those screenings along with some partners who were able to support us over the summer. And as far as in medical homes, meaning that our students have a medical provider, 98% of them have had that, and 97% have had medical insurance. In regard to IEPs, it's a requirement for us to have 10%, which is 64 students with an IEP enrolled in IEP annually. In 3 of the 5 years, we've been able to meet that, which is actually a pretty amazing feat, because we have to screen a lot of students to see, if they have a need, and if they do have a need, we have to find a way to support that. And then moving on to the Parent Academy, and it's just a little bit of data here based on the Parent Academy. Over the last 2 years, what we've done, we've been very busy in the community. We've been able to support students and families on the bus with Smarty Ants, partner with other Head Start locations. We've been able to partner with Library Partnership and have homework help for students. And then this is a map showing over the last 2 years all of the places that our bus has been. And then moving on to Hippie, we've had 2,700 home visits over the last 2.5 years, because we're halfway through this year. We've had 2,700 home visits, and in the back of your packet, the way your packet is designed, in the very back there are reference materials that have the graphs that are a lot bigger. And looking at this graph here, it's pretty staggering data, and it's our Hippie, the state Hippie office sent this down to us, but it's demonstrating, or it's showing that 92% of students who were enrolled in Hippie and completed our Hippie program here in Alachua County were school ready, compared to 50% in kindergarten. They marked school ready in kindergarten, compared to 50% of their counterparts who were non-Hippie students. It is. It's actually pretty amazing, and that trend is across all the counties that have Hippie. Okay, so I'm able to slow down a little bit now and look forward into the direction that we are looking at for Head Start and want to share with you. And Dr. McNeely asked me to make sure I go over this really well and make sure it's fully understood by all. And so if you have any questions or if anything just, doesn't make sense, please stop me at any point. But looking forward, our competitive process, and I've provided a copy in the back of your pamphlet, looking at these 7 steps, as well as to anybody in the audience who needs it. We created this document based on previous competitive grant announcements. So those announcements that have come out in the past, we've been able to gather this information to really determine what is the federal government asking for when we have to go through this competitive process. And we've narrowed it down to 7 steps. And as I told my staff, we believe in doing what's best for children. We believe in doing what's best for families. And so therefore, this competitive process is something that, not only do we take serious, but we feel very confident when we look at these 7 steps that we can perform well in them. We have one area, which is number 3, that probably provides us the most concern, and I'll discuss that and explain why. But today I'll only discuss areas 1, 2, and 3, just because time permits 1, 2, and 3, and then I can answer any questions that you may have about the other ones. So looking at our Head Start program locations, in the red is where Alachua County Public School Head Start programs are located. And in the blue is where other Head Start programs, in the blue and the green, other Head Start programs are located, including one in our community. And then in the surrounding areas, all the way through to Ocala and surrounding counties up into Jacksonville. So as you can see that prior to this, CDS, they were the grantee for the programs that were in the blue, and during their competitive process, they did not win their competition grant, and therefore now the program in the blue has that grant. Yes, ma'am. It was CDS. CDS, yes, ma'am. So this is just a notification, and you have this in the back of your pamphlet that you can read further as well. The notification that we will recompete, and our grant period ends July 31st. This summer, our grant period ends, and we will have to recompete. And we don't know when that is yet, but we know it is definitely going to happen at this point. And so, sir.
Is that, who holds the blue?
Episcopal Children's Services.
Georgetown?
Yes, they have early Head Start on Waldo Road.
Okay. They don't place this here in Alachua County.
They have one in Alachua County, one program in Alachua.
They have other programs?
They have quite a few other programs. Yes.
Marion County?
Marion County, out in, they have Marion County, Levy County,
These are all
Gilchrist, Chiefland, Bronson, Duval County, a lot of our surrounding counties, they have those Head Start programs in those counties. So what we've been charged with thus far, and you can read it further in your packet, is within 45 days now, and we just received this information yesterday, we will have to turn in an inventory of all of our federally purchased items to the federal government in preparation for this competitive process. And so that's what we will work on tomorrow to make sure we have that prepared before the 45-day cutoff window.
So, Ms. Rappe, have
Yes,
you
ma'am.
had an opportunity to find your grant people who will be assisting with this?
Yes, ma'am, we have. We have contracted with Western Kentucky, and they'll come down. The gentleman, his name is Chris, James Watkins, but he'll come down in a couple of weeks to do the board governance review. But we've contracted with Western Kentucky to assist us with planning for the next, we didn't know if we were gonna have to do the 5-year grant or the competitive grant, but he'll help us plan for the competitive grant.
Okay.
So, yes. So initially, what we were told, maybe 3 weeks ago, is we needed to have a 5-year grant prepared by May 1st for the next 5 years, which means we need to determine what the goals are, what curriculum we're using, where are we gonna be located. Everything needs to be outlined for the next 5 years in a new grant. When we received this information yesterday, this means that we're going to have to turn in at some point we're going to go through the designation renewal process, and once that grant notice comes out, and this doesn't outline when, this is just saying it's gonna happen, but once it's posted, we'll have 60 days to write and submit a new competitive grant. And the competitive grant will look different than the 5-year grant, because the competitive grant is basically a battle of the pens. Your pen versus my pen, and whomever reads it decides the best grant, and that person receives the bid. So we'll have to write a competitive grant based on those 7 things, or the things that we're going over today. Being able to not only establish that we can maintain authority and be able to follow all of the procedures and standards of the federal government, and that we're the best grantee to do it.
And you have to do the 5-year grant too?
That we're not clear on. We sent a question yesterday to the federal office to see if we have to do the 5-year grant or just a competitive grant, because it's 2 different grants altogether.
Can I ask about the inventory, having to turn materials back to the federal government?
Yes.
Or is that actually physically?
No, we're turning in a list.
So just a complete inventory?
We have to turn in a complete inventory for everything that hasn't fallen off the federal register or hasn't exhausted with the federal interest. So we will have to turn in a complete inventory stating all the items that we've purchased since, I imagine the things we purchased 46 years ago won't be included, but the items that are still on there that still have value, we would need to be able to submit all of that to the federal government. And in case, if we competed and did not win, be prepared to return all of that stuff to the federal government.
Is there a minimum purchase price or value for that?
Well, that's what I have to clarify, because they want to know everything from classroom items. You know, what items do we have in our classroom materials and supplies? I'm assuming it's not including consumables, but I don't know if there's like a certain value that doesn't get included in this inventory. So I'll clarify that within the next, hopefully, week and know for sure.
So I have another question,
Yes, ma'am.
and I don't think I asked you this the other day.
That's okay.
Who will determine, say for instance, if Episcopal Services will be competing with us, and you have I guess a panel who must read all of these pages that you all, and there may be other people who are competing as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they use the same team to make decisions, or is it random?
No, so from my understanding, because I haven't been able to read a grant yet, but from my understanding, for those who have gone through it and who have read these type of grants, it's a team of people, and they receive however many people have turned in their grant, and they read their grant, and they score it based on a rubric. And whomever receives the highest score, because there are points that are allocated with each of those 7 categories, the 7 steps, there are points that are allocated. And whichever grantee or company receives the highest score would be the grantee or the company that's forwarded to the federal office for them to make the final decision on.
Okay, the Episcopal School on Main Street, is that?
Yes.
Walden Road.
The Episcopal Children's
Oh, they have a
Services,
school at Main Street, too.
the early head, on Waldo Road, I'm sorry,
Right
on Waldo
next to
Road.
Waldo
West
Road.
Coast.
Down from the gas station.
The West Coast Seafood, right next door.
As opposed to business service.
On Walden.
Waldo Road,
Yeah.
the plaza next to West Coast.
Right.
Looking at our needs, so what we have to determine is the need in our community, not only for Head Start, but for early Head Start. So what will happen is when this is released on grants.gov, the funding announcement will state a certain amount of money, $6 million per year, or $25 million for 5 years, or $30 million for 5 years, whatever the federal government deems this county should have. And what we'll have to determine, looking at our need and our community assessment, is if we're going to have early Head Start and Head Start, only Head Start, or only early Head Start, or a combination of the two, including home visiting and a lot of other things. So looking at our need, what we know, because we've completed, so what we did, we got in front of it. We have a community assessment for the next 5 years that we completed this summer. And what we know is that there are 5,700 3- and 4-year-old students in 2016 that were in our community. And what we've been able to determine, about 1,400 of those students were eligible for Head Start services, and we provided services to 43% of them.
Now, can I ask you a question on that?
Please.
That 43% is early and regular Head
It's
Start?
just Head Start. It's only Head Start.
Now, we couldn't keep early Head Start. How long has it been? 10 years now?
I was gonna say, we're gonna defer to Ms. Crowell, who's in the audience for that one.
Well, I didn't see her out
It's
there.
been a while.
Yeah,
10 to 12,
well,
10 to 12
and then
years.
because of the money.
Okay, let me ask, just as a housekeeping
Yes.
measure, if anyone is asked, if
To come.
this is being recorded, so I don't want anybody calling out from the audience. If you need to say something, please come to the, I do want your information, but we want to hear it on recording too. So, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, about 10 or 12 years ago, we had Early Head Start and decided to relinquish Early Head Start and only serve Head Start
We couldn't
children.
afford it. It was there.
Miss Ann, could you come up for just a second? The reason we relinquished Early Head Start. She'll be able to provide you the actual factual information.
To the best of my ability, as I recall, we relinquished Early Head Start because the grant amount was not enough for us to provide the services that we needed to provide. We were unable to keep up with the raises and the cost of running the program with the amount of money that was allocated by the federal government.
And then we came up with the funding for,
We gave,
without me saying what it is, I mean, you can say it. Then we could fund the Head Start, because,
we relinquished Early Head Start
well, we kept Head Start and combined it with preschool.
with the School Readiness Pre-K program.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
we did.
All right,
And then Child Development Services from Marion County
Marion County, right.
picked up Early Head Start and
That's why I
ran
was
for a
wondering
few
how that's
years.
different than the Episcopal. They've gotten it since?
Child Development Services lost their grant to Episcopal, so Episcopal inherited the Early Head
I
Start
got it.
program that's in Alachua
I'm
County.
just catching up on
Yeah, I know, it's a lot.
Quickly with this slide, we were able to determine that in 2014 and 15, for those who can't see, I'll read it really quickly. There were 31% of Black children in this community that were enrolled in a pre-K or nursery program. 55% of white children enrolled in a pre-K or nursery program, 8% Hispanic, and then 12.6% all other races. But in 2016, looking at poverty, 41% of Black children were in poverty, 17% of white children were in poverty, and 30% of Hispanic children were in poverty. So this helps us understand that we have a high number of Black children in this example that are in poverty, and not as many Black children that are going to pre-K or nursery schools. This is in your packet in the back in the references. There are 4 categories. The 4 categories are WIC, total births participating in WIC, births to mothers with less than a high school education, total births with less than adequate prenatal care, and total births paid for with Medicaid. Looking at those 4 categories, the areas in the red are the areas that mark high in those 4 categories. So this tells us that these are the areas, Holly Heights, Lincoln Estates, Walmart on Waldo Road, Kanapaha area, and the Tower Road area, the UF Eastside campus, that these are areas that have a high population that have births that are participated in WIC, or mothers with less than a high school education, or less than adequate prenatal care, or births that were paid for with Medicaid. So we know when we're looking at our program that in order for us to go out and attract or market to those families who need our services the most, that we may need to look in these areas either to have programming or to be able to actually recruit in those areas and have programming nearby where they can actually receive the services. These are the projected counts of students ages 3 and 4 in 2019. And the blue line will tell you the actual number, but of course there is a margin of error there. And so, for example, in Holly Heights, there are approximately 75 students who are ages 3 and 4, which is our market in the Holly Heights area. But it could be as many as 95 or 96, or as few as 58 or 55. So that's what that light blue is. That's the margin of error. This slide here probably is the most telling slide when it comes to looking at areas of need and determining where we need to have our programming if we so choose. And this is by zip code. So in the purple identifies students that were in poverty in 2016. In the gray identifies students 0 through 4 in that zip code. And then the yellow identifies the number of slots, childcare slots 0 through 12 in that zip code, including Head Start slots. So another example, that in the zip code 32607, we know that there are a high number of students ages 0 through 4, but we also know that there aren't as many childcare slots, but there is still a high number of students in poverty as well. Our service options, currently we have a center-based model, meaning that students come to us, we have a classroom as a center-based model. So what we'll have to look at is what type of service options do we want to provide. It could be a center-based option. Currently, we also contract out 2 Head Start classrooms to the Child Center. That's one of our innovative ways of providing support to students on the west side of town, even though we aren't able to open up more classrooms. It's partnering with the Child Center and providing them with the opportunity to have more students in that area because we know that area has need. Contracting out early Head Start. Another option would be early Head Start home visiting, where we have liaisons or early Head Start teachers who go into the homes and provide support to parents and students in the home. We also have currently a HIPPY dual enrolled model where we have 80 or 85% of our families are dual enrolled with HIPPY and Head Start. And then we also would need to look at our case management because currently we have a caseload. We have done quite a few things to be innovative and creative with decreasing caseloads, but our goal would be to have our caseloads less than 45 families per staff member.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the early Head Start and HIPPY overlap? I mean, they both serve the same population, right?
With Head Start, with HIPPY, I'm sorry. HIPPY serves students that are ages 3 through 5. They're piloting a program that serves students ages 2, but they don't overlap with early Head Start just yet until they finish piloting the 2-year-old program. With early Head Start, we're looking at families that are birth or prenatal, you can say with the mother being pregnant, through ages 3.
I see.
Mm-hmm. So with that, if we provided early Head Start, my recommendation would be either contracting out those services or doing a model with contracting out and providing home visiting.
The 3-year-old are served by both though, right?
The 3-year-olds, if you're 2 and you're turning 3, you could still be in early Head Start, but if you're 3, September 1st or thereafter, you would come to Head Start.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The Episcopal services, am I correct? Are they combination of the other places, most of their other places?
In a lot of Head Start programs, a lot of them do family child care partnerships. A lot of them do home visiting. They have an actual child. They have a center-based.
Would they have the early Head Start and Head Start in most of their other contracts?
They have early, yes. They have Head Start and early Head Start. The majority, like I just got off the phone with another school district, Lee County. They have early Head Start and Head Start because it's 0 through 5, everybody understands now that 0 through 5 is how you make the greatest impact with students. So a lot of grantees are realizing that in order to remain competitive, to be honest, in order to remain competitive, it would benefit that grantee to look at a 0 through 5 model. simply because that is where the greatest impact is for students. So for us, having a Head Start model, that's worked for us for the last 46 years because we haven't had to worry
But
about.
for the last 10 years.
Or 10 years because we had early Head Start before.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, so that's
You're going
something,
into a competitive situation.
we are. We
That's why
are,
I'm asking that.
yes. So it's really looking at,
We need more partners.
yes, we need more partners. We need more partners and we have to change our model to be competitive.
When we go back to the total number of children served, is that number going to be static, whether or not we include, if we have early Head Start, does that mean we have less Head Start? Does that mean-
Possibly. Once the funding opportunity announcement is released, it'll tell us how much money will be allotted for this area. And based on that money, it's on us to determine what we can serve with the money they're going to provide. So that's where we would have to become very creative to see how can we still serve a high number of Head Start students, but still support our early Head Start as well. And that's really a matter of the numbers. If we're not going to have it on campus, which it probably would be best to possibly contract it out or have a home visiting, looking at how we would have to look at decreasing our Head Start if we can't fund it all with the amount provided.
And so it's really increasingly problematic because we already feel, if you look at the numbers presented earlier, we have a lot of children that aren't being reached, that we don't have room for now.
Yes.
So in some ways, whoever we expand to, there's a contraction somewhere else.
Yes.
So,
There's going to be a give and take.
okay.
There's, depending on the funding. If the funding comes out and it's more, then we probably could remain, with 640 and still serve early Head Start. But most likely the funding won't be more. So,
Give and take works really well with numbers, not
with
as well
children.
with children.
yes, sir.
So the reason I'm going back, trying to get my memory here, is because the federal government reduced the amount of money. Sorry, Ann, I didn't want to get you up and down.
When we applied for the Early Head Start grant, it wasn't as competitive as it became later on. So we kind of accepted like $900,000 to serve 75 children. I think it was so many pregnant moms and the rest were infants and toddlers. But the funding did not increase. It sort of stayed steady. And in 2013, when the sequestration occurred, programs lost money. So the money just did not keep up with the cost to run the program. And because our initial grant settled for that $900,000, we weren't able to negotiate to get even more money to operate the program.
Ann, was that initial grant you're talking about going back to that 10 to 12 year period?
The initial grant, I had to be in the
2008, 7?
no, when we first got it, it had to be 1990 or 2000.
Well, I remember we
99 or
had two
2000.
crisis times. When we lost early Head Start, right?
We relinquished it.
Okay, relinquished.
Relinquished,
That's right,
yes.
because okay, and then about 2013, 14 is when that's when they weren't increasing the money, so it was another crisis because of the salaries too.
Well, in 2013, well, I've worked for the program for 34 years.
Right,
Up to 2013, the program was self-sustaining.
right.
In 2013, three things happened. There was the sequestration, where we took a 5% cut across the board.
Okay, I remember that.
The board gave a higher increase than
We
we
gave you more
projected
money,
in our
right?
grant. And then we had a contingency fund that had been generated from school readiness dollars that we thought we could use as a cushion. That money was used to support another program, so when it came down to Head Start, the board provided funds so Head Start could provide the raise for the staff.
Yeah. Because, okay, I'm just going back because Head Start is so important to this district.
It is very
And you know how I
important.
feel about it.
It has evolved. It's a moving target.
It's a moving target, this is, yeah, it always gets scary when these kind of talks show up again.
Right. That's the beauty of a grant-funded program, a federally funded program. And when they stopped giving us our continuation grants and decided for us to recompete, that's when things really got tough.
Well, I appreciate it, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Okay, so moving on to number 3, our past challenges. And this is the area, every other area, and the reason why we feel so strongly about our competitive grant is simply because our service model isn't like anybody else's in the state, if you really want to be honest, simply because it's early learning development and the Parent Academy. Nobody else has a Parent Academy. Nobody else has a conjoined hippie program. Nobody else has what we have. And so when it comes up mano a mano, we can compete. However, our past challenges is the area that we have to be able to address and determine what do we do going forward to ensure we don't make the same mistakes. This gives you a quick 5-year glance of our grant over the last 5 years, and you have this in the back of your packet as well in a bigger format. And this also shows, and this is actually publicized on the Head Start website, so this isn't anything that everybody else doesn't know. But this also shows our incidents that we've had over the last 5 years. And the incident that put us into the place of recompeting is from 2016-17 school year. So it's from those first 2 that are in August and September, and then we had another one in September. After every one of those, after all 6 incidents, what we've had to do is create responses and corrective action plans and convince the federal government that we were not going to make the same mistake again. And the greatest mistake was active supervision. Active supervision means that we know where our children are at all times. We have a required 1-to-10 ratio. If we have over 10 students, we must have 2 adults. And if at any point a student isn't with an adult, then that means we have an active supervision issue or we're in non-compliance with the federal government standards. So after each of those incidents, or at least after the last 4, because the last 2 we're still waiting to respond to, we became very responsive, and all of them were corrected. And what we've done so far is we've implemented 6 additional training days within our Head Start schedule. And those are full staff training days, along with the training days that we have every month on Wednesdays, at least one Wednesday a month. We also created an active supervision committee. The committee is comprised of instructors and assistants and specialists for them to discuss actually what's going on in classrooms and what corrections we need to make going forward. We've been very transparent with the policy council, with staff, with our constituents, with our district community. Every year we do an annual self-assessment where we have to determine where our strengths, where our weaknesses, and then implement solutions to address them. We have looked at our hiring practices and our professional development, and we've been very innovative with our hiring practices, with growing our staff from within, and attempting to provide professional development to those who are interested in growing within our organization. We've looked at our staffing pattern, and we've adjusted after each incident our staffing pattern to ensure that the people who are here serving our children are the best suited people, and that they're committed not only to children, but to what we all signed up for when we decided to work for Head Start. And then, of course, we revised our policies and procedures every time we've had an incident. And so just some final thoughts. Is where we are now is analyzing the need and the impact on achievement. You know, we know the need is in the community. We've been able to look at the data, and the data demonstrates that we have a high need of child care, preschool in our community for 0 through 4. Address our active supervision and code of conduct requirements. That is probably our biggest challenge, because that has been an issue every year for the last 3 years or 4 years that we've been faced against, and we have to be able to convince the federal government that we can keep children safe. And with having 6 incidents in 3 years, that's a big question to be able to answer and a big plan to put in place that we have to do. And then the last one is looking at all of our competitive options. And, you know, it's me providing you with this information and you all being able to determine what you want to do going forward. And it's addressing our issues. It's competing, it's winning, it's remaining the grantee where we provide the service, or it's competing, it's winning, and looking at outsourcing certain services or determining if we want to compete going forward. But that's where we are, and those are all the options that are on the table. This is the place where my slideshow ends, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Mrs. Strappe,
Yes,
going
ma'am.
back to the locations where all of the blue asterisks are,
Yes, ma'am.
and you said those were Episcopal services areas. So if we wanted to find out information about their programs, we'd have to go to each one of these districts?
No, ma'am. So when they won the grant from CDS, that's one grant number. So it's when you go to the Head Start website, when you type in their grant number, all of those grants pop up, all of those locations. So it's not a deep dive, but it is a little bit of a dive to be able to research them.
Would they have listed any non-compliances?
Yes, they would.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
So what's the number?
They have one listed.
She's asking for the specific number because she wants to go look.
The number of non-compliant, they have one listed.
In all those areas?
Yes, ma'am. They have one that we've been able to find. They have one non-compliance listed.
Is that for just 1 year, or is that for the whole 5 years?
That's for this grant number. So however long they've had this grant. Now we can go and look at the grant they have in Jacksonville, which would be another grant number, or further down south to see what their concerns or issues are. But as far as in this grant number for the grant they won from CDS, they have one issue listed.
So are you referring to the one on Waldo Road? I'm looking at one grant number for the one in Green Cove Springs.
They have one grant number for the one on Waldo Road, the one near Trenton, Chiefland, Bronson, Williston, Citra, Marion County. Is one grant number because they won that whole grant from CDS.
Okay.
And so with that, they have one in, and in Marion, they have it in Marion County as well.
I know.
They're similar in size to us.
I believe they're larger than we are. They're larger than we are. And I mean, and it's one of those things that, to put it into terms that, to put it into different terms is we're like a microcosm of what we know is happening across the state. It's a public entity, which we are a public school district, a public entity that is battling and will be competing against private, for-profit, not-for-profit entities. So with that being said, they don't have the constraints, they don't have the barriers per se. They don't have what we have either, which are the relationships. They don't have 50 years of service in this community. They don't know each and every family that walks through the door and is connected. They don't have that. So it's really being at a place where we have to determine, and Ms. Ann told me this when she handed the baton to me, and I didn't realize what she was handing to me. I do now though. She told me when she handed the baton that you're gonna have to make changes. And I realize that now, in order for us to remain in this position, and not just remain, because my job as an administrator, your administrator, is not to ensure that you're able to make it for the next 5 years and be competitive and successful, but it's to ensure that you're able to be competitive for the next 10 years, whether I'm here or not, the next 15 years. And to do that, we have to remain innovative, and we have to be able to make the changes and put students first.
And I think it's obviously important, and I know you're going to do this, I'm not, and I know you're 3 steps ahead of anything I'm thinking, if not a lot more. But I think our goal is to emphasize all of the positive factors you just mentioned, that you know, our blemishes are there in public and on paper. We understand that, but of all the good work that's being done, all the good work that has been done, and all the very tangible advantages to the children and the communities in Alachua County, those have to be weighed also by those making the decision. So I'm sure you're going to be doing that, and I, speaking for me, I think I can speak for the board, that we're all totally in support and are confident in giving it the best case we can.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Strappy, thank you for the information. The scoring rubric that we will be evaluated by, do you know that now? Or is every scoring rubric different for each community based on the needs that it's trying to meet?
Well, what I've been able to do is to download, and working with our new planning team, they sent me the rubric, or at least the funding announcement for last year. And looking at that funding announcement, knowing what each category scores as and how many points are in each category. And so we're able to see that, and I can forward that to you, it's not a problem. So we know from last year what the scoring rubric was and where the points lie. We don't know how much it'll change this year, but you know, we're planning based on what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years and how much that has changed, and the margin hasn't changed that much.
And my second question was that I heard you say that we have to make changes.
Yes, ma'am.
What are those changes that you anticipate? Are you far enough down the road that you've been able to do some type of analysis to know the areas that we need to change?
That's a good question. Well, we've had so for example, with our active supervision committee, I've given the charge to the teachers, the assistants, the people that are doing the work every day, and I've asked them, what accountability measures do you think should be in place if, for example, there's an active supervision violation? And I've given them that charge and asked them for them to create the language, for them to create the accountability, so we all can sit at the table to figure out what works, what do we need to do. And so that's one thing that we know we have to change. We have to figure out, why are we having so many active supervision issues every year? Why are we having maltreatment issues every year? And what are we going to do to ensure that we decrease the margin of human error? Because the policies and procedures are there, but we got to decrease the margin of human error. So that's the greatest thing that'll put us in jeopardy of not only not winning, but if we do win and it continues. So that's one thing that we have started analyzing. And then we've also started analyzing where we're located and if we really are marketing towards the people who need the program and if we're getting them in the door. And how can we become more marketable, because we're competing against other preschools and other programs within the community. And for example, we've had almost 100 kids withdraw. We have to replace those 100 kids within 30 days. And if our waiting list isn't deep, then we're in a place, and thank God it is, because we have a really good team of ladies who go and, you know, recruit kids, but we can't lose sight of that. So yes, we have done an analysis and we do know the areas where we're gonna have to make sure that we increase our level of quality as well our effectiveness. We have done an analysis. Yes, ma'am.
Do you still have the wraparound services with VPK?
Yes.
And that would seem to be an advantage that you have that other Head Starts don't have, since you're paired with the school system.
Well, a lot of other Head Start programs have picked up on that.
Oh.
And so they picked up on dual funding sourcing or blended or braided funding. So a lot of other programs have picked up on it, and they actually have 3 funding sources to our 2. So they're able to use Head Start, VPK, and then Title I as well. So, you know, a lot of programs have picked up on it, and they provide more classrooms because of that.
We can't use Title I too?
That's a conversation that I would have to, you know, have with the Title I department and the district to see. I'm not sure how that works. but that's what other districts have done. Yes, ma'am.
I have so many questions, and I know we have board meeting, but one of the questions, are you aware of any persons like us, the districts, who had to go through this competitive process and they didn't make it?
Yes.
Which district?
The district is, I believe, is Taylor County.
Who?
Taylor County, I believe it's Taylor County. I know they lost.
What's the comparison between our district and their district?
They're smaller. They're
Okay.
smaller. They're smaller than we are. There were 100. I can tell you this. There were 124 competitive grants last year. 75% of those won their grants back. 75% of the grantees that competed won their grants back. The margin of win, or that win rate, is lesser in Florida, the state of Florida, because we have bigger conglomerates as well. Meaning we have bigger grantees that have a whole lot of Head Start programs.
So other than the numbers that have to come in to show who had the highest amount, what about qualitative things? Are they going to look at narratives and key people? I see Children's Trust people here. I see your host. I mean, this is amazing. All of the employees who are here backing. What else can you do other than the numbers?
Well,
I'm worried.
You shouldn't.
I know, I'm really worried, and I serve with you all with the Policy Council, and this is creating a problem for me.
Yes, ma'am. We have been we are in a good situation when it comes to community partners, and it is a part of our grant that when we submit it, we will have to submit support letters, and so we have a great number of community partners. The Child Center, SWAG, Alachua County. We have the Chamber of Commerce. All of these companies, we have about 7 or 8 different organizations that have submitted support letters in support of our grant, which is a requirement. So we've been getting in front of it, and we've been planning. So because we're going to win, of course we're going to win.
I want you to. I was waiting for that.
No, ma'am. That's not. Yeah, that we're going to win, but it's making sure that we're very strategic about how we win. And so we have gotten in front of it, and we've gotten our community partners to rally around us and say they support our bid or our competitive process whenever that day comes. We just have to make sure that we kind of tweak and we fix those things that we know that are our Achilles heel at this point.
And inasmuch that you have to self-report when you have these different problematic things to come up as incidents, how frequent, other than when Captain Bob was here, and I think he thought that this was just the best. That's the feeling I got when he presented to the board and everything. But how frequent do you all send in the greatest stuff? You have to self-report every incident.
We self-report every incident. Captain Bob is no longer with the federal office, by the way.
I heard.
Yes. So, but we self-report every time we have an incident, but we also send in, for example, like at the Cave Museum on December 1st, we had over 150 dads and over 350 people that attended. So, when we have our events, we have an 85% show rate with our families. So we send in that information as much as we can because we want them to realize we're doing a lot of great things here in our community, and just to have a little patience with us as we work through some of these challenges, knowing that we are going to work it out.
And then the other thing I was thinking one late night, if we don't get the grant back, what does that mean? I don't know who could answer this, maybe the superintendent. What does this mean for Duval Early Learning? I mean, this is a combination of a school with maybe 9 kindergarten. Is it not that many kindergarten classes?
About 9.
Dr. Barnes?
8 kindergarten.
8 kindergarten classes.
And 8
and so we need you to be at the Early Learning Center and some of these other schools that we have so low enrolled.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm worried about it.
Yes, and it's a big impact on, because, you know, we have 115 staff over the 12 sites, and we have partnerships and contracts with other partners such as the Child Center. So if we did not win this, that does mean that, you know, that's the jobs of 110 people that's in the air, and that's a question mark. That means that, you know, the contract that we have with the Child Center, we have to figure that. So it's a lot. Everything that we've purchased, we have to return. So it means a lot. It does mean a lot. And it doesn't mean that the new company that comes in, because they could have a different model. Their model may not be center-based where they need all these sites like we have.
But if they take our children, if they are the ones who will be guaranteeing good stuff for our kids, they're going to have to come to us to probably rent space.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Simply because a lot of different Head Start programs have gone into an area of family child care partnerships and home visiting, and not an early Head Start. So everybody doesn't have the same model as us with 12 sites. They wouldn't have to necessarily come in and rent space simply because they may not have the same model. Just how we're looking at having a different model, they probably would have a different model because it would meet more of the needs of the community.
But how the children are educated
Yes, ma'am.
is the thing that, because they may have something too, but it's not going to be as great as
It's
ours.
not going to be. It
And
won't be
therefore,
seamless.
we get those children
Yes,
into
ma'am.
our public schools.
Yes, it won't be seamless. As far as in the transition to kindergarten, we wouldn't have there wouldn't be any control on our end, and the partnership. You know, it wouldn't be what we have now because we're one system. We're a pre-K through 12 system, so there wouldn't be that establishment. Yes, ma'am.
Is kindergarten readiness one of the factors that is considered for getting the grant?
We'll have to demonstrate that we have a plan in place to ensure that we have a partnership and a strong alignment with our kindergarten schools or sites or
And you said
principals.
Hippie has a 90%?
92%, yes, ma'am.
92%.
And that's what they're looking for, is what type of creative model that we have. I mean, that's really what sets us apart from everybody else.
Right.
Not many people are dual enrolling Hippie and Head Start. Actually, not many at all. We're probably one of the only ones in the state.
Dr. Paulson.
That's a good thing.
What's the percentage of our Head Start kids, children are in the Duval Early Learning Center?
Percentage, we have 8 classrooms out of 35. Percentage 25%. 25%. I didn't have that one written down. Yes, so about 25%.
Do we have any more board comments or questions?
Of course. How, I'm sure the staff, this is not something you are keeping secret.
No, ma'am.
How is the staff responding? Your administrative staff, as well as the instructional, as well as the ESPs, as well as the people in Hippie, as well as the people who handle the Parent Academy? What's their thoughts? I know that this is your time, but I'm just wondering, what's happening?
To be honest with you, as I always am, because we've been so honest, we've been transparent from the very beginning. There isn't anything that you all are hearing today that they haven't heard over these last 4 or 5 training days, and that they don't hear constantly, simply because I respect that this is their livelihood. I respect that this is their profession. So therefore, we've been totally honest and transparent every step of the way. So how do they feel? I know some of them probably feel nervous. Probably feel a little anxious, If you didn't know if your job was going to be here next year, it would make you feel nervous and anxious. However, we have a lot of really good people who love kids and who are dedicated to the mission of Head Start. So they're holding on. They're holding on, and they are, and the reason I know that they're committed and they're holding on and they're willing to fight, because it's different. If they weren't willing to fight, it would be hard. But this isn't hard because they are willing to fight. The reason I know that is they come every training day, they come to work, they come and give input every time we put out a survey, and they're honest with me. It's not always good, but they're honest with me, and we're able to have that that respect between each other, where they can say they're scared, and I can understand that and tell them what we're going to do.
And the parents, how are they responding?
It's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions because, I mean, not knowing this opportunity announcement could come out over the summer, and we have 60 days to compete, and then another 30 days or 60 days for them to tell us if we win or not. That could take us into September or October, and then they tell us that if we don't win, then these people have to find, all these families have to find new daycare or preschool, and then all the staff have to find new jobs. I mean, so it's.
Mrs. Strappy, please stop right there.
Okay.
Do you mean to tell me that it could be October before you know?
Yes, ma'am. It could be any time.
Please.
Right now on the letter, if you read the letter, it says until 2020. We could get an extension until 2020. However, right now what they've given us, that letter is just a courtesy to say, you will compete. It's happening. Then at some point after we turn in our inventory within the next 45 days, that's when it could go on the grants.gov website. And once it hits, that's when our clock starts ticking. So that the reason we're having this meeting now is to kind of gather the information and gather the input, so when that time comes, we're ready.
Mr. Hartley,
Sure, Dr. Pauls.
we need the community. We need people out of the community to help. We'll do it on here on the board, we'll do what we can do, but we need everybody. This is a great program. I know, and before you did a great job. And, we have got to keep this program. So we need community help.
Exactly. This program has a strong history, all the way back to Cora Robeson, B.B. Fernside, even beyond them, Thelma Jordan. So the program has been here for almost 50 years, and it has made a difference in this community. We have parents and children that I see today, and the parents are still talking about the success of their children, and they attribute a lot of that to their participation in Head Start, not to mention the parent engagement piece. That in itself makes a world of difference once that parent realizes how important their engagement is. And that's what Head Start does. It's a very unique program, very much needed here in Alachua County. And they're doing a great job trying to hold it down, but Head Start has become increasingly more complex over the years. And that's probably part of why early was relinquished, is because the demands kept increasing, but the money didn't keep up with the demands.
Been there with me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm almost afraid to ask, because we do have a meeting at 6 o'clock. Do we have any other comments from this meeting? I'll say that, my experience with Head Start was and Dr. McNeil could probably tell me the exact number of years, but for several years, probably 5 or 6 years, I was teaching at Duval. I had Head Start classes, not because anybody made me do it, but I had time in my schedule, and it was just an absolute joy and a highlight, and I so appreciate the work done by the teachers, by the teacher aides on a daily basis for these families and these children, and nobody does more important work. And so I really appreciate it. And if there are no other comments, I'm hoping, then we're going to Are we,
I think you do have some comments.
okay, we're going to absolutely adjourn, if, at 5:45, if not before then. If you'd like to come to the microphone.
My name is Katrina Mariex. I'm an employee at Lake Forest. I would like to know, is there a way that you all could change the language? I don't know, so let me just put my question. So that the neglectful employees, because of the deficiencies that we've had, is there a way that you all could modify the language so that the whole organization is not held accountable for the neglect of people who are not?
Well, you know, I was thinking about that very question.
The reason I asked, because before she came, the two deficiencies we had, it was the same employees from before, and it happened again. And so because this is our bread and butter and our livelihood, and we're all credentialed, and we love what we do, how is it that the entire organization is held accountable for the neglect of other people when it's not all of us?
And but I would say that I'm 100% in agreement. We look at this massive amount of good work, and we look at the very small blemishes, very small, and the reporting is what the federal government requires. It's not, this is not something that the school board is doing. And it's, you know, the money, it comes from Washington, and that's, and we're doing everything we can. We, as I said earlier, we're in support of Ms. Trappy. We're in support of a new contract, of winning this competition. So I think I totally agree that that is an unfair castigation of the entire group of great folks. I certainly don't see it that way, but that's the way the rules are, that we have to report as the government requires, as part of the contract. Ms. Certain.
I think I'm understanding something different from what you just said from Ms. Merrick's. It seems like, and I've asked several questions about the deficiencies, if I'm understanding Ms. Merrick's correctly, there's an issue where collective bargaining agreement is prohibiting the program from dealing with an employee who is, whatever the infraction is called, is it negligent? Lack of supervision? So our collective bargaining, the district's collective bargaining agreement that's been agreed upon, conflicts with what the federal guidelines. So the federal guideline has a higher standard than what we are holding our employees to. So Ms. Merrick's is asking, is there any way that the collective bargaining agreement could be changed so that 100+ employees' livelihood is not put in jeopardy? That's what I understand.
I would say, I don't know that I have that information, but I would say that
I just want to
collective
clarify.
bargaining can only be changed one way, and it's not by this board decreeing something, it's collective. So, Ms. Merrick's, I understand, and we certainly, I'll speak for me, I'm certainly, agree with your assessment, and anything we can do to promote, keeping the program the way it is, we're going to do it. Okay, thank you very much. Reverend Anderson?
Smith.
I'm sorry. Smith. Smith. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I wanted to do a couple things. One, I wanted to celebrate the excellent work of this body of people. I think they've done excellent work. They've given us a fact-based presentation. We've got a lot of things to be excited about while we're being challenged. So, Ms. Strappy, and to all of you from the community that loves and appreciates what you do, I wanted to celebrate and say thank you. But I also wanted to frame the issue because the dynamic is changing. This is becoming a competitive business model. It is not business as usual. So being nice and smiling doesn't get you the awards anymore. Episcopal Children's Services is a formidable opponent. And one of the requests I have from Ms. Strappy and the team, supported by the board and others, is we must do a detailed competitive analysis with a SWOT to completely understand what they're doing differently to be sucking up all these contracts around the state, not just here. They're doing something that's making them more attractive. We need to understand that to the detail level. We need to know what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and we need to seize those because these people deserve to be applauded and to not have their jobs at risk while we fix the broken pieces that we've talked about, Ms. Merrick and others that we've talked about. But let's celebrate, let's get focused on what we've got to do because it is very different. And I don't want us to walk out of here thinking just responding and saying we got a lot of nice people that support us is going to get us this contract back. It's a different world from where we've come from. And we have to appreciate that and address it effectively. And I think if we do that, we have what we need to make the difference and be able to have the award presented. And if there's any assistance that community can provide, please let us know.
Reverend Smith, I could not agree more. And I think I can't help but wonder whether part of what they have going for them is the fact that they're not a public school. Okay, we've got about 1 minute.
Ms. Chisholm is a retired Head Start administrator.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Just very quickly, just wanted to speak to what Tina Sertain mentioned. I've been at the table with Ms. Crowell when there was an issue with staff not following the policies and procedures. And I'm just going to say this quickly. Back in the day when Alachua was the union president, I think, everybody was on the same page in terms of expectations of staff. And I know the union is important, you know, I'm not saying that, but many Head Start programs don't have a union. They were exempt. But that is a valid point.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to, Dr. Paulson, are you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Ms. Trappy, for an outstanding informative. We're adjourned.